Welcome to the Big Movement Podcast. If you're ready to create results and make huge strides in your business, finances, personal development, and health, then you're in the right place. Pushing past excuses and powering through procrastination can be a challenge alone. Here, you'll get the support, tools, and knowledge you need to get to the level you desire in your business and life. Let's get started with your host, Byron Ingram.
And welcome to the Big Movement Podcast. And today we have a special guest. We have Brenda Adelman, who's a life coach, a solo show mentor, and a forgiveness expert. She helps entrepreneurs and performers turn their life stories into compelling speaking presentations and shows them how to be captivating on stage and on video. And we all know that video is so powerful today. So let's give a warm welcome to Brenda. So Brenda, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here. It is wonderful to be here. I've known you for a while here in this online space, and I'm just glad to be here.
Oh, it's a great thing. So now, Brenda, tell everybody a little bit about your background, because it's one that's very fascinating that led you to do what you do today.
Okay, well, my focus is on teaching people how to tell their story, how to craft their story, and how to share it in a really compelling way. Tell their message so that it makes a difference in the world. But also a very big component of my work is to heal yourself from your story. And the reason this all came about is because I got a big story. In 1995, my father, whom I adored, I was definitely daddy's little girl, even though I was an adult at the time, he shot and killed my mother, who I loved. She was my best friend, my quirky, eclectic, bohemian mom. And within a couple of months, he moved in with my aunt, my mother's sister, and then quickly married her. He did go to prison as well. And that is a big story. It's actually an event, and I do talk about why an event is not a story that is compelling enough to turn into a business. But I was shocked, depressed, really feel like I lost about 5 years of my life to depression. And everything changed when I started writing my story first for myself to actually witness what happened to me on the pages of my journal. And then the next step in my healing process was sharing some of my very deep poetry with a very dear friend. I was an actress already in Los Angeles. I was in the top acting class, and I had an inner guidance only after I started writing and getting in touch with my material that I needed to share this openly in the forum of a storytelling exercise in my top acting class. And when I did, all the judgment I thought I would receive, because I was so filled with shame, and when we have secrets, we have shame, we have blame, we have guilt. But instead of getting judged, not only did I get a standing ovation in this acting class with this short scene, maybe 15 minutes, but people started sharing with me about secret shames they had in their life and how they wanted to stop holding on to the past. And then a director wanted to direct me, a producer wanted to produce me, and I just kind of went with the snowball effect and had my first professional production of, I turned that short story into that short scene into a full-length one-person show. Had that first performance in Los Angeles for like a 5-6 week run, and it was very successful in that it changed people's lives. People laughed, people cried, but because I hadn't done the inner work, I was miserable. And so took time off for a couple of years, went and got a master's degree in spiritual psychology, learned the forgiveness process that I now teach, learned to forgive myself, learned to set healthy boundaries for the first time, came back fiercely, and then started performing my one-woman show, as a keynote, as doing workshops, speaking after that. So my whole healing happened from first writing my story, getting leverage on it, and then creatively expressing it. And I have changed, I've performed the show and spoken live for over 11,000 people all over the world. And, but I can't emphasize enough that the healing process was just as important as the creativity process. And then being able to find my message, which is about forgiving the unforgivable, is something that now when I present my material, I can open people's hearts up and change people's lives. And that's what it's about for me.
Oh, excellent. And it's great that you share that, because so many people, they have different things that have happened in their past, and they let it truly define them in a negative way, where so many times you think how many people they've been stuck where they are, where that one moment has created a massive anchor, and they're holding on to it without moving forward for a variety of reasons, instead of letting go of it or using it to fuel you to move forward in a different direction.
Yeah, what I find is people then isolate, or they don't even realize because they've never been taught that, oh, that being betrayed by someone 15 years ago has stopped them from, in their personal life, has stopped them from being able to trust themselves, to meet someone amazing that they could have an intimate relationship with. And it's also maybe stopped them from creating a relationship with a business partner who could really help them, or they haven't worked on the communication or speaking up for themselves in a way that doesn't shut people down, all because they haven't gone back to that initial incident. And so that's some of the work I do with people is, well, how do we get to that initiating incident and clear it so that right now in the present you can experience more peace and more joy and more prosperity.
Right. And it's so important to be able to create that future so you can have the future that you want. Because you think of how many people you meet that, you know, they've done things such as, they'll say, do you remember the good old days?
No, I'm so glad I'm not in there. Because that's the whole thing, that our best times are now and the future, all by what we are creating in this moment.
Right. Because the moment you hear people use language like that, that tells you they're not focused on creating for the future. They just kind of are coasting through life like, oh yeah, this is good. And
I tell you the truth, I really do believe this. I believe that if we're not learning and we're not growing, then we're dying.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's so important to do that. So when you think about learning and growing, what are some of the things that you've been learning over the past couple of years that have helped you continue to grow?
Oh, my goodness. Well, you know, the universe has a sense of humor, Byron. So,
really?
Yes, I don't know if you know that, but I certainly do. So I believe oftentimes that we teach what we need to learn. And so I started out in the online arena and coaching with forgiveness. I was focused on that because that was the main theme of my one-woman show. But the truth was I still had levels of forgiveness against my father that, you know, it's so nuanced. Forgiveness is a journey, not a destination. And so what I was able to do is, as I was teaching about forgiveness, I was clearing the energy that I had in my body, in my cells, about my father and blame. And so I had years of that. And then I really completely forgave my dad. I have a 3-step forgiveness process where I feel like the reason I didn't clear it for so long was because the missing piece was releasing my anger in a healthy way. So that's, now I put that in the first step of my process. But then, you know, a year ago, my wife left me and betrayed me. This is after like years of working on all my forgiveness work. I have people who, you know, I actually was honored to receive a Hero of Forgiveness award, and when she left and betrayed me in that way, and so suddenly I was so angry and devastated. And I even had a friend say, oh, you're the forgiveness queen. You got to go right into forgiveness. But I was able to, with clarity, to say, no, I actually need to be in this step 1 of my forgiveness process where I'm angry. This is actually healthy, but I also knew how to release it in a healthy way versus attack or have it leak out with people who shouldn't have it, or directly, you know, confront her. I did something called freeform writing. I went to therapy, and things like that. But, you know, that's what I mean by the universe has a sense of humor. It's like, really? Have you forgiven? So I had that opportunity. And then as far as growing, I mean, I'm constantly growing. I mean, even with my business recently, I realized that I still have remnants of, you know, growing up in a family where I was the emotional caretaker for my mother and my father in a way because they weren't there for each other. And so, you know, because I do so, I help hold a space for people to really heal their stuff on top of creative creating awesome, like one-person shows or speaking engagements and really being authentic, I hold such a space that there's also a fine line because I'm wanting to hold this space so they can heal, but I'm not responsible for them. And so there's a level of completely like teaching my clients so that they can thrive and survive and, just it's like I give people permission, but I'm not responsible for them. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, it definitely does. That you have to point them in the right direction for a journey, but you can't hold their hand on it. They have to take the appropriate action themselves.
Right, because I used to get really upset if someone wasn't taking action like they said, like they committed to, and then I had to realize, wait, everything's in divine timing, just like it was for me. I can give them the tools, and I can nurture, and I can give permission, and then like absolutely, I would say, get into the knowing that in divine right timing they are going to soar, something like that, because that's kind of been my process.
Right. Now, obviously, you had to go through several stages, obviously with anger and so forth, when she had left you. How did you channel that anger when it happened? Because you think about how many times someone has something happen in a relationship, and then when it comes to their business, everything comes to a grinding halt. How did you leverage it?
Oh, like how did I deal with the anger and continue working?
Right. How did you continue working? How did you use it to fuel yourself?
I'll tell you exactly what I did. Yeah, I have actually a client who just recently, we were working on this because she's going through a dark night of the soul, and she's like, but how did you get past this? How could you do the work? And you have to do the work if you're supporting yourself. I'll tell you what, I was having panic attacks actually, because, I was together with her for 13 and a half years, and it was just sudden. She cheated and just like left. And I would actually get up in the morning. First of all, something I teach is having bedtime intentions. So before I would go to sleep at night, I would stop my monkey mind and I would set an intention to sleep really well and to heal anything I needed to during my sleep state, and only remember what I needed to in the morning if I needed to, look at something more deeply. But the other thing I would do when I noticed myself in such a panic is I personally would go on YouTube and look up videos of like Michael Beckwith, who's Reverend Michael Beckwith, who's one of my teachers for sure, and listen to his videos. I actually had the honor of being on a guest panel with him several years ago because of doing my one-woman show. I was a keynote where he was the main presenter at this conference. But if you rewind like 6 years before that, I was a member at his church in LA. And I'd been on his silent retreats, and I just know how he just channels spirit. So I would get up in this panic state and put on his videos from his church, and just listening to him would elevate me. I would also probably listen, as I recall, to Eckhart Tolle. There's so much amazing stuff on the internet. Another teacher that I study is Adyashanti. And so I find that they're so elevated, their consciousness, that I could tap into that and I would feel better.
Oh, excellent. Because sometimes you just have to reach out to that source where you have the positivity to help ground you where you need to be at versus going into this disruptive state and staying there.
Yeah, and it's even hard. I mean, there was definitely a time when I would just call my friends and want to, it's almost like this drowning feeling, and they would take me, they would, lift me. And there's a time to complain and to be in your fear and stuff like that, but then it's so important to move out of it and elevate your consciousness. And I do want to say, I met somebody wonderful, within a few months of that. It was because I did the inner work, because I actually acknowledged my anger too. At the same time, I did some healthy anger work doing freeform writing. I went to therapy. I didn't squash it because in the past years before with my father, when I went to spiritual bypass and to I forgive, my thing is I would overeat and I'd over-exercise. So I'd end up gaining weight or hurting myself. And I didn't want to do that to myself anymore. Or my anger would leak out toward other people. And so usually someone I was dating or something like that. And so I'm so committed to being highly conscious. So I did the inner work. I took responsibility, and then I was in a wonderful relationship. I had a boyfriend for a year, and now I'm actually with another person who is just sweet and kind, and it's because I've done this inner work. And so the thing about raising the consciousness, though, is I'm a coach. I had to be in a space where I could coach and hold for people. So it was so important that I would jump on those webinars, or I'd listen to the services of Michael Beckwith or Adyashanti or Eckhart Tolle, so that I could be in a space where I could hold for my clients, and I could.
Right. Oh, naturally. It's
just like with the show. I think it's, because I have a one-person show. It's kind of like the show must go on. I'm a New Yorker, grew up in Brooklyn. It's like you have to do it. You just have to. Although, let me say that if you're going through something and you're just emotionally a mess, if you can take time off because you don't have to support yourself, or you've set up, like I'm working toward, having passive income, then take time off, because that's a very nurturing thing to do. But at the same time, even if you're taking time off from work, I would still say listen to these wonderfully these people with high vibrations, because it will raise your vibration. Or like a lot of people listen to Esther Hicks, things like that.
Right. And when you think about it, it's part of that process that we have to go through, and that's healing. And you think of how many times people don't take the time off to listen to themselves, or just to heal.
It's like an epidemic. People overdo. Right. They overwork. They take prescription drugs. They go out. They overwork. Yeah. People are so afraid. But the truth is, and I know this to be true, I've worked with so many clients as well. It's not just from working on myself. It is taking that time with yourself, getting the support you need if you need to with a therapist or a coach, and having that time with yourself is the key to freedom.
Right, exactly. Because the more we do that, the more we're able to propel ourselves forward. And because when you think about getting your message out there, if you still have those things that are holding you back, just like you said, when you first had your show going, where it was doing really well, but you were miserable on the inside. And you think about how that can affect people in today's world, where if they're miserable and they don't address it, it can compound to other issues. And before you know it, something small where it could be easy to deal with becomes a massive mountain. Like, oh, look, you have the Himalayas inside your body because you didn't deal with an issue.
Yeah, well, the truth is, I was inwardly guided to then take the time off and get the master's in spiritual psychology and work my process. But yeah, a lot of people don't listen to that still small voice. And so they keep doing what they've been doing, but they're going to get the same results. So like if I kept doing my show, and then back then I was still in a love-hate relationship with my father, and I was single, and like if I would have kept doing the show, it would have compounded, and I'm sure I would have gotten super depressed instead. And also the other thing is, this is for people specifically who are telling their story, because I teach them. It's so important to heal your inner stuff, because otherwise you're not as good a storyteller. I'm sure even though people laughed and cried in the beginning stages of my show, they didn't have major shifts and transformations, which is what they do now. I mean, I've performed my show for women prisoners, for domestic violence trainers, for survivors, like a youth at risk. They have major shifts, the people that I perform now. How could they before, when I wasn't healed? So it's like, I liken it to this. Like when you go to see, let's say, stand-up routine, I've seen many, and like, let's say there's two different comedians or performers, and they're both talking about dating. You go to one show and it's really funny what the person says about all these crazy dates, but it's also kind of caustic and hostile, and you leave with like not a great feeling because that person hasn't healed their issues around dating. And then you go to another show and it's so funny and it's also so crazy, but you leave feeling good because the performer actually has some leverage. They've done their inner work, so they're one step ahead of their jokes, and you feel really good. And so that's what I tell my storytellers. It's like you want to concurrently work on your process as you're working on crafting your material and presenting it, so that you leave the audience feeling great, like they have hope, like they know how they can change their lives afterwards, instead of feeling like, ew, that was kind of icky,
Right, exactly. And it's the skill set with presentation because if you don't present something in the right way, it can come across wrong.
Yeah.
Or let's try to think, what's a good word for it? Let's just go with wrong.
Well, yeah, it's and that's why also I teach people how to present on video because video, because I come from an acting background, video picks up everything. And so what happens is if someone hasn't worked on their inner process and they're trying to talk about something, what happens is you see they're holding something back and but you don't know what it is. And what it usually is that they had something painful happen in their life. They don't know how to deal with it or they think it's too much, and so they're hiding it. And so there's a level of hiding, so you don't know why you're not connecting with the person, and you're not really feeling their expertise, even though they can be amazing, and it's because they haven't dealt with that. And then the other thing is sometimes they're just too emotional about something, and so that's also like it's like you want to be able to work your process so much so that if you want to be emotional about something, let's say you're abused or something, you can be, and you can be fervent about it, but you, as the expert, have done the work. So you're just doing that for an effect to get people riled up, but you're not doing it because you're caught in your stuff,
Right, exactly. And that's so critical when you look at things that you do the work to portray yourself because we live in this age where video is integrated into everything. You look at all the different social media platforms that are the major one when you start thinking about Facebook. You look at Twitter, and of course, obviously, YouTube. Well, that's all video in itself. Mm-hmm. But when you start looking at them, video is becoming so commonplace. It changes it. And you think about news stories today. If you go to most news websites, there was that time when it was just a text article that was posted. Mm-hmm. Now there's a video segment with so much is putting out there.
Yeah.
So with that, people are being conditioned to get information from a video. And if people are not incorporating video heavily, they're missing out on a huge opportunity in their business.
Yeah, and the reason why I started teaching people how to tell their stories on video is for this reason, because there's a lot of people out there that teach you technically how to do video. I don't teach that. Although I give tips on lighting and stuff like that, but there's a lot of, you got to get your videos and this is how you should set it up. But they don't teach people how to be authentic and confident. They don't give them tips and tricks, from being an actress for so many years. It's like, it's so easy. And I forgot, I have a 7-part free training on that. Maybe that's what I'll give your audience on how to be authentic and confident on video, because it's easy. You take 3 of these exercises and automatically you can connect with your audience. Because there's Facebook Live, which is so important these days. You have to give your personality. And so there are tricks of how you give your personality so that it's not just facts, especially if you're like a coach or a healer or something like that, But even, I also work with lawyers. Even lawyers, it's different, but you want to show your personality because that's what's going to have you stand out versus, why are they hiring you versus someone else? I know for me, I remember something personal about someone, and that's why I hired them.
Right. And it's so critical to be authentic in video. Because you think about how many times you've seen, let's say, a Facebook Live, or you've seen a YouTube video, or someone just pre-recorded video and put up on Facebook, where it almost sounds like they're robotic. There's
exactly,
no motion.
They are.
Everything's monotone, and yeah.
Right, the monotone, exactly. And that's what I deal with in the free training. I'm just going to have it up for a little bit longer because I'm going to actually put it into a paid program. But it's like, for example, there's so many tricks, but the robotic thing, I just worked with someone one-on-one about this. It's because they're in their head about their lines and wanting to say their lines perfectly. And first of all, if they have a teleprompter, they don't have to remember their lines, but it's a matter of rehearsal, like a professional actor rehearses. You rehearse before you shoot. And then, but I actually believe in being much more improvisational. Like I'll have bullet points of what I want to talk about, and then I will talk it into the camera because I just feel like it's much more conversational than that. Or I'll just improvise, but I've been doing this a long time.
Right. And, I'm with you in that. All the videos I love to create, they're on the improv basis. I have the bullet points, but the exact words I'm going to say, I really don't know yet because I might not feel the words if I write it out in advance. I think this sounds amazing, and then as I'm reading it, So,
but that takes practice, and you probably have more practice with that, and that's why I work with people, because it's like I was in acting class for years and years, and now I present it all over the place, and I've had to deal with, the mishaps that happen with doing things live, like having the electric go out, or having someone in another room when I'm in a restaurant, and in the other room something crashes down, so there's an element of like being okay with whatever happens. And getting out of your head. Most people are in their head. And then the other thing is, listening is so important. And a lot of entrepreneurs, like, they feel like it's such a lonely process. And it is kind of awkward because you're just talking to your computer or your camera. But as an actress, I've had to do close-ups where I'm doing a love scene and I'm just looking at the camera. And so there's techniques, to put someone you love right behind the camera, like in your mind's eye and stuff like that. That's something that's so easy that all of a sudden will change how you feel. Things like that, it'll make it less robotic.
Right, exactly. And you have to be ready for the unexpected. I think it's one of those funny moments I look back onto, and I just think I just roll with it now. It's with my cat. Anytime I'm shooting a video, she loves to get to be super attentive. So one time I'm literally shooting a video, and she just starts walking in behind me, jumps into the video, and in the past I would be like, well, so much for this one, but I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep on going. And I think I was talking about some type of program, and she's like, and that's right, like, this is how important it is. Even my cat finds it interesting. So
exactly.
If she finds this interesting, trust me, she doesn't find a lot of things interesting. It means that you need to take a look at this.
You know what, Byron? That's about being in the moment. Because that's the difference between being a professional and being a newbie. That reminds me of, years and years and years ago when I was in this play in New York City, and that was where someone dropped a set of plates or something. I was the lead in this play, and it was, we hadn't rehearsed with it. I think it was it next door or something? I can't remember, but when we rehearsed, there was nobody in the space. And then all of a sudden we're performing and something crashed down, and I literally just ignored it and went on. Now, it was a play that was scripted, so I couldn't have gone out and said, oh, listen to that. But what I didn't do is I didn't pause. I should have paused, wait for the moment since everybody is listening to that, and then gone on. That's what happens when you're in the moment. When you're nervous and you're thinking about it being perfect and you don't have the experience, you haven't worked with a coach, you don't know, so you just, blast through things instead of just take your time.
Right, exactly. And that's so vital, is to understand when to be in the moment and when not to.
Right.
Like, when do you have to stick to that original plan, that original script, and when you have to just
and I will say that it's like I've also been in performances where I'm in a play and someone is unwrapping something in the front row, but it's a play and there are other people that are reliant on me, and then I'll plow through it. And that's a moment where you just do what you have to do in the moment, even though you're in your head. But also, once you have experience, the audience doesn't see that you're like, man, what the hell's that person doing? They don't see that. They just see your professionalism. Right. So, yeah.
Right, exactly. Now, something that comes to mind, because I'm sure there's people out there who wonder, well, how do I do this? Because you think of people that they can be really expressive when they're talking to a group of people, but the moment it's just them and the camera, they go from being amazing, like, hey everybody, hi, to hi.
I know. So funny. I call that, it's the same thing that sometimes happens if you've been at live events where there's someone who's really engaging when you're talking to them, and then all of a sudden they put a microphone in front of them and everything just stops and they get these wide eyes and it's like time has changed. So I already gave one tip, which is put if you even need like a picture of your best friend or your child or your dog, you can literally put that picture right behind your camera or your computer if you're filming on your computer. Either you can think about them, and what you want to do is put them just past where the lens is. That was a technique I also learned for taking good photos. Still photos is you don't look at the camera, you look past the camera. So it's the same thing. You look past it, and if you need a picture, put a picture of them. That's like the quickest technique to have someone be engaging. And then the other thing is, I like, if you want variety, this is also an acting trick. If you want variety in your piece, choose two different people that you feel very different about to be there. Take two different pictures in your mind's eye or pictures. I say this so for example, if someone is, let's say a wellness coach, and their essence is very gentle, I would say, why not put a picture of your pet there? Like, my dog always makes me smile. And so if I'm thinking about talking to my dog, I know it sounds crazy, but for pet lovers, you'll understand it. I'm just going to be happy, and there's going to be an exuberance in my voice, and I'm going to talk to people like this. However, if I was wanting to be authoritative, and I say this for like some of my clients who are like lawyers and stuff like that, and they want to be authoritative, they don't want it to be like this and all exuberant. Well, what I say actually is, it's so funny. It's even for me. If I want to be authoritative in something that I'm teaching, I'll switch it to my lawyer that I'm talking to. So all of a sudden, I'm going to be talking in a different way. I'm not going to be flat and I'm not going to be boring, but I'm going to be talking like, you need to listen to me right now. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, put a professional there that you want to talk to.
Right.
You want them to really understand it. So this creates variety in your piece. Beyond, like, there's other acting techniques, with putting objectives and things like that and breaking your script down, which I can help people with. But there's simple tricks like that will bring life to you on camera.
Right. And it's so important. And, one of the things I talk about when it comes to marketing is you think of that ideal client, and it's that same thing of you have to know who you're talking to. And it's so much more powerful because then you feel like someone's talking to a person instead of they're just talking at the camera. And you can tell the difference right away.
Right. That's so important in marketing, that talking to one person. But I say for performance, which is so exciting, is you can change it up. And because for marketing, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, if you're writing copy or something, you're usually like, well, this is who it's to, so that you're using their language and everything. But for video, it's a little bit different because there's this secret that it's like this secret thing that brings variety. And it could just be for a moment where you use these different people, like different avatars.
Right.
It becomes fun. Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly. And the reason why I think it's so critical that, especially in today's world when you're looking at video, is that people are getting their message out there. You're putting video out in one way, but then also you're using paid advertising to amplify it. So you have to think, well, who's going to be the one listening to it? Because in today's world, there's so much noise. If we don't plan ahead, like just you're saying, they add that variety, but then what about we take it to the next level and make sure that the people we're imagining that are standing right there, they're the ones that we want to talk to, so they go, I get it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And in that way, what I would say is put your ideal client there, and put it there, because you were saying how in person they can be so engaging. It's like, well, if you absolutely know who your perfect client is and that's who you'd be writing to in your marketing, and you already have, your perfect client comes to mind, put them right there. Pretend they are right there. It's wonderful. It's almost like being a kid and doing the as if. Like when you play with your neighbors and stuff like that, and you pretend to be people and you pretend someone's there. It's like the same thing. Pretend your client is right there. It's like, what's the difference if they're on Skype with a coaching call with you or if they're right there on the other side? Talk to them like you talk to them so that you get out of that robotic thing.
Right, exactly. Because the quicker we can get out of that robotic feeling, the better off we are when it comes to succeeding in and are getting our message out there. Because if you think of social media today and how noisy it is, you look at your feed on Facebook and how much stuff there is. There's people wanting to get your attention by posting stuff that they're passionate about or just ranting about in many cases. Or you see the businesses that they're putting an ad out there, and so many of them are static, yet there's a few that are video. And then you wonder, ooh, this looks interesting. But some of them, they don't have that compelling message. They feel more like, I'm just here to sell you something, and instead of they want to connect with you.
That meant the thing, message is so important because it's like there is so, like you said, there's so much noise out there, and I know for me, I want to know what someone's about. I want to know if their values actually resonate with me, and I want to know if their message is going to help me. I don't, there's so much out there about make $90 million in 10 days. God, if I see one more of those things, they just so turn me off. But then if I hear someone's message, and I know for me, I really connect with people who just are real and raw, but not raw in, like we were talking earlier, like not raw in, I just have to talk about myself because this is important. Because I don't care, frankly. I care if you have a message and you have a lesson that you've learned or you're on the way to learning. That's what I'll listen to, and that's what I teach my clients. It's like you don't have to be healed to share your story, but you have to be highly committed to it and share your process. That's what's interesting, like sharing the real process and what you're committed to in a positive way. That's what always gets me.
Right, and it's great that you say that because so many people believe that they have to have everything completely figured out before they start sharing their story.
Oh, I know. And there are story teachers that teach that. And I know for a fact that is not true. And I actually am really opinionated about this because I started sharing my story before I was completely healed. And while I did say that I would go home and be miserable, I still changed hundreds of people's lives. And not only that, I kick-started my healing process. And the truth was, I was not sharing from I'm a victim to this. I wasn't, but I'm sure there were elements of it in there because I wasn't completely healed. But the message I had in the very beginning, because now my message is very clear because I've done so much work. It's how do you forgive the unforgivable to experience peace and love now? But in the very beginning, I remember when I did my one-woman show the first time, the message I was committed to beyond anything else was that I will love again. Despite this betrayal, I will love again. And so if you're right in the middle of something, but you have something positive you're working toward, it's like share it because other people need to hear that, but do your work at the same time.
Right. Exactly. That's so critical. You have to do things where you share your message because you think about the impact that you have. Someone could be going through a tough time, and because your message was exactly what they needed to hear, it changed the course of everything they were doing.
Right.
Versus
waiting. You might just be one step ahead of them, but that's fine. So be that one step ahead so that you do the inner work you need. Like I didn't share my story in public when I was completely in devastation and depression. I didn't do that. I worked my process. I did my writing. I wrote poems. I then shared it with a friend before I shared it in public. So there was probably, for me, because I didn't have anybody guiding me, that was probably a year process there,
Right.
Just from the start. I mean, there's a way to shorten that process by working with someone like me and helping you know what to do so that you can speed the process along. And it really just has to do with a lot of the inner work. It's writing, but doing the inner work as well. And the other thing is sometimes people start and they're like, okay, I want to share this, but they actually aren't healed enough to, so it throws them back and has them lose a lot of time. I even had this happen with a woman who saw my one-woman show. She's now a client of mine, and she's in my How to Create, Promote, and Profit from a One-Person Show program. But it started, she was already a professional singer, and she saw my one-woman show, and she was inspired to turn her cabaret show into a one-woman show to share her lessons. And she was highly conscious. And so she actually had a show within the month that I went to, and it was wonderful. She's a wonderful singer, and she shared some very, very personal, dark stuff. And then she lost her voice for like 4 days. And then she started working with me, and like I told her why she lost her voice, because she was too exposed, because this was new material. And what happened is she put it out there, but she didn't have a container to keep herself safe while she was doing it. She took on other people's stuff. And so we worked on that. And then she put the show up again, probably like a month and a half after that, and it was amazing, the experience. Not only was she satisfied like she was the first time, but her voice was fine. You know, she had taken care of herself. So that's the whole thing also about sharing too soon is you don't want to share too soon or without the proper ways to take care of yourself. Otherwise, you can backslide.
Right. Oh, that's so true that you can easily go backwards because you don't have the right things in place. So now, based upon that, you know, when you think of everything that you share with people and how they can get their message out there, they're overcoming their fears, what's one thing that someone can do today to start getting their message out there?
If they're already at a level of where they've healed, you mean? Like they're already at a place
right.
They've
They're
healed?
already at that level, yes.
Well, you know, you talk so much about videos. I have to say, I just think videos are amazing right now. So I actually think people should jump on the Facebook Live bandwagon because, well, it's scary. So before that, I guess they should do a video that they don't have to just put out there because I don't want them to freeze. You know, the thing about doing videos from your computer or your camera, your phone, is that you can, you know, do a few takes. So I would say, okay, the very first thing you should do, I would say, is make a 2-minute video, not Facebook Live, because I don't want people to put something out there and then they can never get it back. So put yourself on video and then play it back to yourself and give yourself an honest critique. And this is where a lot of people go wrong because they start beating themselves up. God, I remember the first time I saw myself on video or on audio. I used to be on a radio show and I was just horrified. So what you want to do is once you hear that voice inside you that's like, wow, that sucked, because that's what usually happens, it's actually an opportunity for you to love yourself more. So I want you actually to put yourself on video, not for anybody else, just for you, and critique yourself. And if you find you're judgmental, I'd say you need to fiercely love yourself. Semantically, what I say is I forgive myself. I would say I forgive myself for judging myself as here's one that I get a lot from people. I forgive myself for judging myself as sounding horrible. And then you put a reframe. The truth is I can learn what I need to so that I sound wonderful. Or the truth is I don't really sound so horrible. I'm just surprised at what I sound like. You know, something like that. It's just this energy of gentleness and loving yourself. And I think that's actually a really important part of the process. Like what if putting yourself on video was a call to more self-love? You know, that would be a wonderful way to look at it.
Right. And here's another little thing to add upon it when it comes to Facebook Live, that you can always change the settings on your phone when you're shooting it to determine who sees it. So you can put it to just yourself.
Right.
So you can get in the habit of going through the process of clicking the record button. So like, oh, you're practicing. But the only person that will ever see it is you. Or even if you say to a couple friends, I'm going to be doing these and I just need your feedback. So you create a little Facebook list of who are these people.
Yeah.
And then they're the only ones that would see it.
Yeah, that's a great idea too.
So that way you get that feedback, because sometimes if we just do it for ourselves, we don't know, like, well, how did it come across? But if there's those people that they fall within that circle of trust, then you know that they're going to say things that's going to be beneficial instead of like, wow, could you have gotten a bigger dagger and thrown it at me here?
Yeah, and just be really careful with who you choose. That's what
right.
Be really careful, because sometimes, this is an interesting thing, sometimes the person you choose you think will be really supportive, but if they have their own negative voices about themselves, they somehow come out toward you. So just be careful with that, right? So you want to actually make sure that whoever you speak to say this is a really positive group and it's for positive. You can obviously give feedback, but it's about building each other up. That has to be clear, because not everybody's at the same consciousness level. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. It's so critical. So now, where can people learn more about you, Brenda, and ultimately with your courses on forgiveness and then being able to put on their own show?
Oh, God, I love doing that with people. So, well, let's see. What's the best thing? Well, I have an awesome a free Facebook group called The Naked Storyteller. And so I love connecting with people there. Sometimes I put on free challenges. I do video tips in there and stuff like that. And then let me mention the free course on, it's called 7 Days in Creative Ways to Sound, Look, and Perform Confidently and Authentically on Video. And that is, it's a long one, but it is my main website, which is Forgiveness and Freedom, forgivenessandfreedom.com/authentic on video. And that's only gonna be up for a little while, because I'm actually gonna turn that into a bonus for my paid program that I'm creating basically crafting your soul, your sacred story and performing it on stage and on video. But that's free, and that has a Facebook group too linked with it, where I link to it that I give free feedback on videos on Tuesdays right now. And I do have one more report for people who want to write, a free report, and they're stuck writing. I have some really good techniques in there, and also a way to get free feedback on your writing, and that is forgivenessandfreedom.com/spotlight. I'd say those are the best ways, depending on what people are interested in.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'm glad that you're able to come into the Big Movement podcast today and share your insights on how people do this. Oh, definitely. It's always
like a master class too for your listeners. It's awesome.
It's always a great thing. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Byron.
Thanks for listening to the Big Movement Podcast today. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Now that you've surely been inspired to take your entrepreneurial career and business to the next level, you can stop by the website and get more. And if you're ready to boost your business brand, be sure to grab your free report, 7 Easy Steps to Build Your Brand Today.